I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. Don't miss Cold's new Season 3, where I look into the unsolved disappearance of Cherie Warren, a woman last seen leaving her job at a Salt Lake City office in 1985. Police cast suspicion on Cherie's estranged husband and boyfriend, but never made any arrests or recovered Cherie's remains. Find Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott, and this podcast is brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. They got a 3-part solution to help out with the opioid epidemic. That's speak out, opt out, and then, of course, throw out. Dr. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Are you, though?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but no. I had a little hiccup this morning, I guess.
A fender bender?
Yeah. Ask me whose fault it was.
Whose fault
mine.
was it?
It was definitely mine.
And who did you hit, or who did you rear
She was
end?
a nice little girl. She's like maybe 20, and she scared her to death. I did a really stupid thing. We were stopped at a red light, and I decided I think I'm going to turn right here instead of go through the light and just jump on the freeway because I didn't want to be late for the show.
Of course not.
And I'm in a 4Runner, and she was in a little car. She was pulled right up behind me, and I didn't check all my mirrors. Totally my fault. Put it in reverse. Crunched her. So we pulled over to the side, and I had to do a little therapy with her as I was trying not to, curse myself, because she was very shaken up. But nothing too bad. I mean, I'm going to get a new probably bumper on my car, and she's going to get a new hood on her little car. But it was a bummer.
It sounds weird because being a therapist, you figure you'd get out, you'd be calm, cool, collective. You know what I mean?
Oh, I was. But inside, I mean, you just did a stupid thing. You just ran into somebody. It's totally your fault. I mean, the human being in me kicks myself for that because I was dumb.
What's your go-to swear word?
My go-to swear word is probably, honestly, just damn. Like that's probably ingrained in me since I was little. Yeah.
See, that's the difference between me and you. Your go-to swear word's damn.
What's yours?
F.
Yeah. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
There's some good research actually that no parent ever wants to hear this, but the research shows that you physically reduce stress when you curse.
I'm stress-free then.
Yeah, you probably are.
My only regret is that I don't have another mouth which to spew profanity from.
Yeah, well, you do a pretty good job on your own. Yeah. But anyway, that was how I started off the day trying to get myself here. And so I feel bad for this girl because she was all shaken up. She said, I've never been in an accident. And so I talked her through it, how to, get hold of the insurance company. And it'll all be fine. But, it's just one of those things.
The highlight of my day.
Life happens.
My highlight of my day so far was I had Frankie and Bowden in the car. Mm-hmm. We're going to pick up Presley. She had a sleepover.
Okay.
Presley gets in the car and goes, Bowden, what did you have for dinner last night? And he goes, oh, those square French fries?
Square French fries?
Yeah, that's what me and Frankie look at each other and go, square French fries?
Yeah.
Yeah, tater tots. Oh, that's what they're called?
I could not pull up in my head what a square French fry was.
Yeah, no, so we were like, square French fries? I mean, they're all kind of square.
He's going to be a writer when he grows up if he can describe stuff that
tater
way.
tots. Oh, yeah, that's what they're called, Dad. Cool. Yeah, those were good.
Why did she ask him what he had for dinner last night?
I think
a
she's
weird
making
question.
Small talk.
Weird? That's weird. I think that's weird.
Because normally if I have the kids,
yeah,
it's bean burritos from Taco Time.
Okay.
You can get 4 for $5.
So maybe at your house it's kind of like, hey, did you get something besides bean burritos last night?
So that was that was breaking news.
They're checking in.
Hey, we've got a great show for you today. We've got a married couple. We've got Keith and Brooke, and they are both attractive.
They really are.
Hey, thank you.
I would say well-dressed.
Yeah.
Well-spoken.
When I met him in the elevator, he goes, I didn't know I could wear shorts and flip-flops. And I was like, oh.
That's the Casey uniform, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
I'm probably not.
Do you have the flip-flops with the bottle opener on the bottom? Nope, you don't.
No.
Not today.
These are my dress flip-flops.
Nice.
Those are just for partying.
You do look nice.
Yeah. All right, Keith, you wanted to come on the show and kind of tell your story. You're the graduating class of a new recovery center called Impellis Recovery in Springville, right outside of Hobble Creek. We're going to find out more about that in just a little bit. But you said your first drink was when you were 13?
I think so, around then, yeah. Don't remember exactly. I remember always wanting to, when my parents had
parties or holiday or something.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up just outside of Buffalo, New York, a little town called Williamsville. But I always wanted to mix the drinks, so I learned how to make a gin and tonic at 13. I still remember the little glass. Like my dad, he's a artist and had these little glasses with ducks painted on them, and that was it. Like that's my first memory of alcohol.
And so you were mixing cocktails for family members and parties your parents were holding. And did it seem sexy? Did it seem cool? Is that what kind of drew you to it?
Yeah, knock a little bit off here and there. I think when I was my first job, as a not a waiter.
Busboy?
Busboy, thank you. I mean, carafes of wine would come back with a little bit in there, and you'd take a look around, and you'd just knock down the rest of that. That was like 16 years old or something through high school. I remember in high school just drinking, Bartles and James, like the 2-liter wine coolers out in the car during
That's
recess.
Going way back.
And then I was bringing it in. This is like my junior year of high school. Bringing it into breakfast. I'd have vodka, orange juice, and a little thermos with me. We went on a band trip, and I turned my bathroom into a bar and invited all these other high school students into my room to drink.
So let me ask you this. In your early formidable years of drinking, were you drinking to run from something or because it created excitement in your life?
I think it was a little bit of both. I remember in middle school, the principal calling my mom, be like, we've got to do something with this kid. Like, he is out of control. So they put me in, I was a chimney sweep in Mary Poppins, and they thought that was the answer. So I think that was the first sign of, like,
out of control in what way, though? Like
just disruptive in class, hyper, terrible grades. I mean, I think they just kind of pushed me out and called it a 65, like, get this kid to high school and out of our school here.
And was that because of alcohol use, or was that just your personality?
No,
just
my alcohol use wasn't really prominent, or like, hey, this guy's drinking in middle school. It was more just my behavior and being disruptive and, causing trouble in class, getting sent down to the principal all the time. And
we've had a few people on the podcast who have said that they had similar situations in their early education, but it was ADHD or something that a doctor diagnosed. Did you feel like you had any of that?
I think over the last couple of months, it's probably something that I'm going to look at. I know I have with Dr. Peterson, actually, through MPELIS. They brought that up. Like, maybe you have a little ADHD, ADD, something like that that's never been treated or diagnosed. And back then, I'm 45, so back then it's like a lot of this, even right now for men and women, anybody, mental health is still this very big stigma. And I think back then, and, maybe Buffalo, because I feel like they're still 10 years behind the times, like it's still kind of an issue that you just don't bring those things up.
Yeah, and a lot of boys who have the hyperactive component with ADHD become disruptive, a little oppositional, or a lot oppositional maybe. And so the behavior is what the school looks at, and that's sort of understandable to a degree. But when it lasts, year after year, it's unfortunate. And now we do a better job, I think, in most schools of saying, well, what else could be going on for this kid? Are there problems at home? Is it more of an organic issue, like a developmental issue like ADHD, learning disabilities? And so we have the ability to test more. But, back in the 80s and 90s, I mean, it was just behavior. It was like, hey, this kid's a pain in the neck. Let's, punish him, or in a lot of schools' cases, let's just get him moving on to the next school. Let's get him out of here. And a lot of people grew up not realizing that was something that they could have had some treatment for.
I want to talk a little bit about your alcohol use during your high school years, because I drank in high school too, but I don't. Maybe a couple of times we drank during an assembly or something like that, but it wasn't drinking in class.
Not for breakfast?
Not for breakfast. No. I mean, I've had my share of breakfast beers for sure. I've had my share
since then.
And shower beers. That's
shower
a thing.
Beers. Oh.
Yeah, you take a beer in the shower.
Okay.
Can't miss a few. That's a good quality 5 minutes right there.
Yeah, right? But you were drinking pretty heavily in high school.
Yeah.
Were your friends as well, or were you just kind of...
I had two groups of friends. I started smoking cigarettes in high school too, a little bit of pot, but I also played sports. Like, I started on the varsity baseball team as a sophomore. Well, mainly because the first guy got injured, but we don't have to go into that. So I had my jock friends and I had my smoking Pink Floyd friends, right? But they both drank. and you drank as a jock to be cool, and you drank over here to fit in and to be cool. So it was very accepted, I think, with both groups of friends that I was hanging out with to drink. And that's like, what do you want to do tonight? Well, where are we going to get the alcohol from was the first question. And that was just kind of common theme. And I remember one of the guys in my Pink Floyd group went to alcohol treatment in like senior year in high school. And we're like, that was so weird, right? Talking about this whole mental health. I'm like, I still remember that guy's name, everything. Like, that was a very weird thing for him to go. It's like, it's not a problem. Like, we're in high school. And when you go to college, you drink every night there too. Like, it's just what we do.
And I think that's the mentality of adolescents, right? I mean, adolescents feel like they're kind of invulnerable. Invincible, that's the word. Thank you. And it reminds me of a quote by Julius Caesar, which was so long ago, we don't know if he really said it. But the quote he gets attributed to is, the most dangerous animal in the world is?
An 18-year-old man.
That's right, because they know no fear. They think they're invincible. And so he, unfortunately, put them up in the front. And I think that's what happens with you. You think you can drink every night in high school.
Yep.
And so you were drinking and managed to be varsity baseball player. I take it you graduated from high school.
Graduated from high school, yeah. And actually, I was on the honor roll every semester in high school.
So it didn't really affect your home life? Were your parents ever saying, like, hey, Keith, I think you might be drinking too much?
No, we never talked about, and I didn't mention I did a lot of LSD in high school, and that didn't really start till my senior year, probably. But we never talked about drugs and alcohol.
Were they aware?
They were aware I was smoking cigarettes, because like the stench when I'd come in, and that was like, don't, but we never really talked. It was never an open conversation in my house, like, we'd go to other friends' house, and their parents would be hosting the party. Like, hey, put your keys in the basket, honey. Come downstairs. Everyone's down there, and there's all your senior class drinking away.
That used to be
that was
kind
normal.
of a culturally normal thing. Parents thought they were being responsible, but we now know through neurodevelopment, brain development, that that's really detrimental to a developing brain to condone heavy alcohol use when you're an adolescent.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting off topic here for a second, but did they pick 21 as an age to legally drink because of some sort of science?
No, that's a government rule.
Yeah, but I mean,
science doesn't enter into it.
Oh, but I didn't know if that was a thing.
It's fluctuated. It's gone from 18 up to 21. No, there's no science to that. I mean, the science now would tell us, brain development kind of maxes out around age 24. And then neurodevelopment of pathways and things, of course, can last your whole lifetime. But new brain growth max about 24. So we would have to bump the age to 24 or 25 if we're going by science. And no, that's never going to happen. So.
All right, hey, you're listening to Project Recovery. We're listening to Keith's story. We just talked about how he went through high school drinking vodka and orange juice for breakfast, having some fun with LSD, so he said, and we're going to find out what the college years look like and when he hit rock bottom. We'll be right back.
A stranger with a gun came upon two teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Project Recovery. We're listening to Keith. Keith, so you graduated high school. I take it you went to college?
Senior, everyone's like going on these school visits. I didn't go on college visits. It was just my parents kind of like, wherever you want to go. My brother and sister, I have two siblings. They went to college, and I'm like, I don't know. I want to be a forest ranger and smoke pot and drink all day. Right?
And you told them that?
I told him I wanted to be a forest ranger. So I just went to the local community college, right, and signed up for all these, you got to take environmental science, and it was just a disaster. I'd sign up for 4 classes. I wouldn't show up to one. I'd drop another one halfway past the reimbursement, fail another one, and get like a D another one. It took me almost 4 years to get through a 2-year college, and I said, I'm never going back to school.
Why was that?
wasn't for me. I didn't know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And what actually triggered, I started working at a bike shop at like 17, 18 years old. I'm like, I love this. I love like rearranging things. So I took a marketing class, A. Marketing management, A. Dean's List first semester. And I was like, okay, I kind of like this business thing. So I finished that school and I'm like, I'm never going back. But fast forward a bunch of years, I move out to Connecticut and took a job there that had tuition reimbursement. Finished up at UConn, got my bachelor's, and got an MBA right after that. So,
and throughout this whole time, were you drinking heavily?
No, I stopped drinking in 2009, the first time. So I guess I was drinking a little bit during my undergrad, finishing that up, but my master's was not drinking. I was eating sugar instead.
But he says that, jokingly, but I mean, he was still looking for a fix.
Yeah, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there's sort of this mentality of I have to use something to feel good and get through the day. I need a boost of some kind. And oftentimes a person who has that addict brain will recognize the alcohol or whatever the substance is getting a little out of control, so they'll shift. And food, especially sugar, is not an uncommon shift. Lots of Diet Coke and a lot of sugar and those kinds of things are off because it gives you that kind of brief, cheap sort of boost. And the consequences, though, are also really terrible for your body.
Well, and for a long time, during my 11 years of sobriety, I was drinking a 12-pack of Coke Zero a day.
There you go. Yeah.
Migraines, just like horrendous.
Yeah.
And then I got onto this other stuff that had this sparkling water with caffeine called Highball, and I was like, had to get one every morning. And I would be like, this is, last year I'm traveling, and I'm like, I got to find a Whole Foods around here. So there's like very few places that sells it. And I'm like, I drove 40 minutes to a Walmart to get a can of Highball for the next morning.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, so when did you hit your first rock bottom? When did you go to recovery for the first time?
So the first time was 2009. I had that glass of red wine spilled in my lap, blacked out at night and woke up it was all over my lap and in the couch. And that was kind of when I knew I needed help. I didn't know where to start, where to go, but I knew something was wrong.
Before we go down that story a little bit further, did you ever have some bad moments that made you rethink your drinking habits prior to that?
Like a Frank the Tank moment?
Yeah. He's talking old school. We're going drinking.
Yeah.
Come on,
oh
Snoop.
Oh, my gosh. This is what's the show rated? No, I think, yes, lots of them.
Because I know in my active addiction and my brain and my memories are very selective. I can tell you all the good times that I had with alcohol, and I could fill up 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 podcasts with those. But I could fill up even more with embarrassing and bad times, but I'd have a hard time remembering them.
Yeah.
No, justification, right? Like after those Frank the Tank moments, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a whole quick justification your brain does, and I'm going to be okay because I'm not going to do this that way again, and da-da-da-da, and then you just get right back into it.
You just start drinking again.
I've ruined funerals. I've ruined weddings. I've ruined family parties. I've ruined birthday parties.
Fraternity get-togethers.
Yeah. And I have a hard time just thinking about those because it embarrasses me so much to see that I was that guy. And I was that guy a lot of times. I'm not that guy anymore, and I'm moving forward. But, I feel like I don't want to get too far past some of those moments for you because I know they're tough to talk about. But, to have you go, I woke up with some red wine. That seemed like a Friday for me. But to you, that was a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I was pretty functional, right? I generally would pass out on the couch and then go into bed, but I didn't have a ton of those in my later years too. But a lot of it, I'm drinking by myself, so there wasn't a lot of opportunity to make an idiot out of yourself.
But did you ever think that was weird, drinking by yourself?
Well, yeah. The other thing after the wine spilled, like probably you did the same thing. Like you get online and you're like, am I an alcoholic? And here comes the quiz, right? And you answer the questions. You're like, okay.
Not honestly, I didn't answer them.
Well, I answered them honestly.
That's pretty scary to answer it honestly. Most people don't, at least the first time.
So you were mindful enough to take the quiz, and you answered it honestly. And what did the quiz tell you?
Yeah, I mean, I had at that point I was drinking every day. If I had the flu, if I was on Vicodin, it didn't matter. I was drinking every single day, and it was like, okay, well, people who drink and I couldn't have just one, of course. As soon as you start, and to just open up this can of worms, and I couldn't control that, and I had no idea how to go to party after I stopped drinking. How to go to party? Like we joked, the first Super Bowl party we went to after I was sober, they brought out root beer floats and like popcorn and M&Ms, and it was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is where I'm at right now? Like, where's the beer and chicken dip and like wings, I'm like, this is not me. And it was a total identity shift. Like I had to figure out who I was. That wasn't me, right? And all my friends I was hanging out with, everything just really changed. It was kind of...
So you wake up from the red wine spill, you take the online quiz. Are you married at this time?
Yeah.
And you've got your beautiful wife here, Brooke. Let's send the mic over to her. Now, Brooke, what did you think about his drinking? I mean, he says he was a functional alcoholic. Do you believe that?
He was a very functional alcoholic, which I think is what made it drag on so long. He went to work and he had a good job and he did stuff around the house. I mean, he was very functional. There are a few memories of things that I'm like, that were those moments that were not awesome.
Cringeworthy.
But for the most part, it didn't interfere with life. So it was easy to ignore.
So you ignored it for a while, but eventually it had to come crashing down. Do you remember when he decided he wanted help? Or did you tell him he needed help?
No, you know what? I didn't tell him. I don't know. Maybe I should have been more overbearing, but I think I recognized at some level that it had to be his decision to get help. It wasn't something that I could force on him or make him change. And I guess to his credit, he had enough self-actualization to come to that realization. Now, we've done that a couple of times, but I think he's at least there.
Now, I do know a little bit about your guys' story before we started this podcast, and you're an active member in the LDS Church.
Yep.
And you are not. You weren't at the time.
He wasn't a member when we got married.
And so how was that dynamic?
That dynamic, I guess, wasn't a big deal. I kind of did my thing and he did his thing. He was very respectful. He would come to church with me when I had a talk or, did something. He would come. We had friends that were members of the church as well. And so it wasn't, I don't know, it really wasn't a big disconnect.
So swing the mic back to Keith. When did you realize you needed help?
Yeah, I mean, I had the little spilled wine, but it wasn't till, a couple months later when it was becoming more apparent that I had this alcohol problem. I had to drink every day. But really, it was going to church and listening to someone come up and, I'm kind of in the back of my head, I'm like, I think I need help. I just, AA wasn't a big thing for me. I went to some meetings and it just didn't feel good for me. It didn't feel like a place where I could go and get sober, right? But that was just me. So I go to church, for probably the second time in 3 years to listen to Brooke speak in church. And after the second hour, a couple came up and said, hey, we're here to announce a brand new free program within the church. It's an addiction recovery program. And the hairs on every part of my body stood up, and I just welted, like the tears welled up, and I was just like, man, if this is not a smack on the back of the head, like this is where you need to be, dude. This is where you can get help. I started that first week. I went through all 12 steps. I stopped drinking February 18th of 2009. I forget when the program started, but it's probably 3 or 4 weeks after that. Then joined the church like 5 weeks in, and that was kind of my story. And then I had that. For me, I think the support system was church for me, and all these new friends. And I was like learning how to be Keith, the church member, not Keith the alcoholic, right? So I think that filled a lot of my time, along with having kids. And
I think that's a great point, is you started drinking at such a young age. You were introduced just in your family, mixing drinks when you were young. It becomes those are the identity development years anyway, from late elementary school through junior high and high school. We're really solidifying our identity of who we believe we are. And it sounds like from your story, alcohol was part of that timeline as well. So it becomes part of a person's identity. And to make it worse, it sounded like it's a good thing, but to make it worse, you were functional. So it didn't challenge your identity in a bad way. It was kind of like, alcohol's part of my life. It's part of who I am. You may not have said those words to yourself, but that's the identity. And I'm fine. I can go to college. I can build a business. I can be married, be a good dad, even sounds like fix things around the house. Like you weren't dysfunctional. And so when you made that shift, you're absolutely right. You're actually changing your whole identity from I'm this guy to now I'm this other guy who doesn't use alcohol. And that's a bigger deal than most people give credit.
And 110%, this new guy is amazing. I love him. Don't love the other guy.
Yeah.
Just don't. But I thought I did for 35 years. I loved that. And I miss it so much. I miss I was the ringleader, the party, I got the beer. It was like, that was my calling. And I miss it a lot. But I tell you what, I've never felt better in my life. And I look back to, I was an adjunct professor back in Connecticut this past spring for the first time, taught a marketing class. And I'm looking back, I've got a couple clients and I'm teaching a college course. I'm like, how in the world did I do that? Especially like feeling the way I did. And then I was drinking for part of that. I was like, it's unbelievable how I've never felt so clear in my head. I've never been so in touch with emotions of like, what's happy or sad. I don't know. I mean, you take all these like entrance, questionnaires and all these, personal behavior questionnaires. I'm like, I don't know if I'm depressed or sad or happy. I'm just kind of me.
Detached from your emotions
Totally
all those years
detached.
when you're drinking every day.
And the only emotion I would feel is when you drink. And you're like, oh, this feels good. I'm happy. And then you wake up and you hungover and I feel like crap, So
You're listening to Keith's story. He talked about, with the help of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and their 12-step program, how he found sobriety. Now, you think this would be a good place to end the podcast, but it's not, because 11 years later, a crack in the foundation began. Make sure you tune in to part 2 of Project Recovery right here on KSL.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.